Farlost, created by John Miro.
44. Montaigne to the crew of Lab 6, Lou called out, trying her best to control her breath, keep her teeth from gritting. That was hard, the way 6 was accelerating, bucking and groaning her complaints throughout her superstructure. Lou ignored all of it, and kept her voice as warm and confident as she could make it inside her half-fogged helmet. "We are on final approach to dock with the Betty. It's going to be a messy first kiss, but we'll get through." She took a deep breath, tugging on the harness she'd bolted to the wall of the nearly empty tank she and the command staff were now in. Safe and secure, she told herself, except for the way every vibration from the ship's engines and overstressed ship's skeleton seemed to pour straight into her spine. "I gave you the speech about us surviving already. Our new friend, Daisy, has shaved a lot of time and guesswork out of this docking procedure." "Thank you, Commander Montaigne. I promise I will take good care of your ship and crew." "Thank you, Daisy," Montaigne said, and closed her eyes. She didn't think it helped, a sentient alien computer virus chiming in right then. "Do your jobs, man your posts, and I'll see you on the other side of this rocky road. Be safe. Montaigne out." She tapped the screen inset in her spacesuit's left arm, and it showed her confirmation the public radio channel had been closed. 30 seconds to detonation, purred the aforementioned alien computer virus. Montaigne could feel the grin spreading on her face and looked down the line of harnesses hastily bolted to the wall of this tank, located on the outside of the stack of tanks near the middle of HHL-6's length. Beecham was beside her, his suit's faceplate almost white with condensation. She punched him in the shoulder. "Slow, steady breaths, Beecham. No fainting." He craned his helmet low to see her out of a spot that wasn't fogged up. "Easy for you to say," he stammered, but she watched his shoulders and their rise and fall began to slow. She nodded and looked further down. Taggart, Rennick, Arnell, and Okoro all held onto their harnesses and waited. One by one they flashed her thumbs up. "See you on the other side, people." She turned her attention to the other side of the tank. On the black square and red X spray-painted there. A few kilometers away, the Betty raced towards HHL-6. Montaigne reactivated the common channel shared by the people in this room. The Betty, the EVA craft Short Round, piloted by Kyle Nishioka, ferrying power lines and high-gauge cabling, and 4 mech-suited crew. The plan was simple enough. 2 mechs would grab Montaigne and her command crew in this room and bring them across to the Betty. The EVA craft and 2 other mechs would carry the cabling from 6 inside the open cargo bay on the bottom of the Betty. The Betty's crew would work with them to winch the 2 ships closer together, while the supercomputer/alien tree on the other ship and the virus copy of itself in HHL-6's mainframe would perform instantaneous course corrections until the 2 craft were safely docked. Once mated together, the power cables the EVA crews carried would be slotted into the Betty's engines, and the ungainly twosome would hide inside Beecham's light show, protecting them from the imminent boomer attack until the Betty's engines, which Captain Travis assured Lou were much more powerful than 6's, were powered up. And then both ships' complements would slingshot around the massive thorn beneath them, using the planetoid's gravity field to propel them away from the boomer, and its mothership following only hours behind. Lou smirked. Yeah, simple. "Insertion in 10, 9, 8... It was cargo specialist Barrowman's voice in her ear. She fought the tension ratcheting up in her muscles as the countdown ticked towards 0. She focused on the black square and the red X inside it. They showed where the shaped charges had been rigged up on the outside of the tank. 7, 6, 5... Lou heard a harsh gurgle, cut off quickly as static bloomed on the channel, then the chime of a radio going offline. "Petrie!" Another voice, anger holding other emotions in check. "Petrie, where are you? This is Nishioka on the Short Round. Report." Petrie's line snapped under the pressure. Lou recognized Specialist Patel's voice, uncharacteristically somber. "He's gone, Short Round." For one frightening moment, Lou worried Nishioka would pull the two mechs waiting outside to escort them across to the Betty, leaving the command staff of 6 to sit there until the two ships made good their escape from the Thorn. It was the safest play, but her skin itched at the idea of putting all her faith, and now all her command decisions, in the hands of Captain Travis. She had put all her trust in those new friends, the lives of her and her crew too, but she needed to be there. Then Barrowman's voice returned. "Countdown resumes from 5. She was going to promote that tall, bearded bastard next time she saw him. 4. 6 bucked harder, transferring all its fury into Montaigne and the others, tightly harnessed directly to her side. 3. "Too late to go back to the cellar," Beecham squeaked beside her. Montaigne laughed, not caring how insane she sounded. 2. She kept right on laughing, feeling the drumbeat of the engines and the stresses in her ship's bones beneath her. 1. Small, bright lights winked in and out of existence all around what had been a black square painted on the far tank wall. Then, too fast for Montaigne to really see it, the remains of the square were aflame, and then they were just gone. A sickly yellow glow filled the space. Quickly, shadows blocked the glow, and 2 massive shapes filled the new hole. Montaigne reached down toward the release for the harness. She had her fist ready to slam down, but waited, her teeth chattering into each other like jackhammers. Her vision blurred, the force of the explosion now joining the other powerful impacts hammering her. She looked to the side, distracted for a moment by the airlock light at the far end of the tank. The formerly red light was now yellow, as if someone was on the other side cycling through. Madness. Everyone else on 6 was tucked into the cellars, strapped down and waiting for this story to right itself. More likely, her soldier's brain assessed, it's a malfunction, courtesy of 6's current joyride through hell. No more time to consider extraneous information. The mechs were shouting on the radio. Montaigne's world slowed. Her hyper-focus showed her the bearded barrowman in the mech closest to her. Flare from the 2 mechs' back-mounted thrusters glowed off the walls. She gave the order. "Go, go, go!" Montaigne slammed the side of her fist into the harness release. The thunder shaking her bones almost trumped her best efforts. She just barely caught one strap of her harness, narrowly avoiding being flung free to tumble out of control. On automatic, as she'd rehearsed in her mind since first strapping in, she reached out and grabbed Beecham by the wrist. He hadn't had her skill and training. He'd been slower in releasing his harness, which gave Montaigne the seconds she needed to grab hold of him. She looked through his faceplate to see him screaming. She let the grin of satisfaction play on her face as she tugged him closer, only to spin him and hurl him away, straight towards Barrowman. Barrowman's oversized mech arms and their massive 3-fingered hands caught the scientist easily. His screaming didn't let up. There were other voices, other sounds of chaos, and people struggling against long odds, both inside the tank and outside, in the closing distance between 6 and the Betty. Montaigne still felt the ship close to tearing itself apart, but now she was smiling and humming. At last. No more sitting and waiting. She could act. She could fight. She looked around, capturing a snapshot of her crew. Ron Taggart, tasked with escorting Stan Rennick, had already reached Barrowman's mech and was strapping Rennick onto one of the harnesses on the oversized mechanized suit specially mounted on either side under the mech's massive arms just for this operation. She watched him slam the belts into place and reach his own arms into the second harness bolted there. She swung her head over to the other mech which had flown through the hole and crunched its feet into the inner tank wall to anchor itself. Arnel Villanueva was flying toward that one's massive arms, one hand stretched toward it, his other hand fisted in one of the straps on the back of Nav Officer Okoro's spacesuit. The ship shuddered even harder around her, and all but 2 of Lou's fingers again slipped free of the harness. She set her mouth, satisfied none of her crew had been left behind, and tugged hard to bring her feet into the wall of the tank beneath her harness. She kicked off, hurtling fast and hard for the center mass of Barrowman's mech. The impact blacked out the edges of her vision. She shrugged into the harness jury-rigged on the mech's side, and with trembling fingers she slammed the belts home. She felt the belts automatically tighten. They tightened the air right out of her lungs. She kicked her feet, got one strapped in the belts of another empty harness. She would be glad for the fact the mechs had conscientiously bolted more harnesses into place than was necessary if it didn't increase her sudden claustrophobic panic. The harness was too tight. She couldn't breathe. Someone else's voice sounded off on the radio, but she couldn't make sense of it. She stared to the side, trying to focus her vision on one still point on the mech suit she was strapped to, but a fresh assault pounded her aching body. The world spun as the mech poured on the thrusters. Sickly yellow, black, sickly yellow, then black again strobed her eyes, but everything was out of focus. The straps had robbed her of too much oxygen. Her body had taken too much of a beating. The vista her eyes could not believe robbed her of her senses. Her mind was dull, her body trapped, her adrenaline rush suddenly gone. An impossible giant below her, spiky and angry, reached up to swallow her and her kind whole. A small speck nearby, shaped like a bloated metal man, like the one carrying her. She knew what it was, or could know, if only her mind could stop reeling, her lungs could take one deep breath. She looked up, instinct telling her that was her destination. A gray, pockmarked ship lay ahead, above. In fewer seconds than seemed possible, she disappeared inside a gaping black mouth. Red light strobed in the mouth, then a crack of bright light far inside. She was hurtling toward that crack, through the crack. A suit-covered monster, a spacesuit her oxygen-starved brain reminded her, slammed its hands into her middle, and then she was floating free. Loud sounds in her ears, whoops and screams punctuated by static. Another suit appeared, talking to her. Words she knew. What they meant she didn't. There were sparkles in the narrowing channel of her vision. Pretty sparkles. The face behind the glass in front of her frowned, said more words, and pounded her chest. She gasped, and was surprised to find that air could again fill her lungs. Vision and reason flooded back, along with pain. The Betty. She was on the Betty. "You all right, Missy?" A hoarse, older voice. The words were sarcastic, the concern behind them real. She nodded and reached out to grab the arm, pump it. Then the man holding her pushed her through a square of bright light. As she crossed over, crushing weight returned, and Lou fell forward onto Rosa Coro. She cried out. Gravity, she realized, as things began to go dark again. She breathed harder, begging the world not to go away. She breathed too hard, and the dim light faded faster. Blur, mysterious words, sounds surrounded her. "Montaigne, we've got you. 7 warm bodies, all safe, and we've got the power line. We're already drawing power, Commander." What? 7? There was something wrong with that, she knew, but for the life of her she couldn't think what. She looked up into the helmet, lit from within. She saw the pretty, scarred face of Captain Travis. "You're a shitty driver," she mumbled, "hitting all the bumps. I'll drive next time." The world went black.
Farlost. Music by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Learn more at servingworlds.com.
Hi, John Miro here. Farlost is brought to you by my backers at Patreon. Patronage starts at $1 a month, or about 25 cents a cliffhanger. Patreon.com. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support.